Bruce Wolff, Wolff, Bruce Wolff from BrigadeAIR.org on today's show. In 5, 4, 3. Hello, I'm Charlie Simons, your host here on Do Not Talk, talking about two things you're never supposed to talk about: politics and religion. That's all I heard growing up. Well, I think that was bad advice. Love my grandfather. Look forward to seeing him again someday. But I think that was some poor advice. I don't think we should have ever stopped talking about it, because look where we are now. You can't have a civil discussion anymore. They just scream you down, shut you down. They don't want to hear anything. They, as in everyone on the left, I'm on the right, and unashamedly so, I'm on the right. But that's because I vote biblical principles, and that's how I see things. Now, you might think I'm completely wrong and I don't fully understand the Bible. Well, before you claim that, just make sure you actually read it, and you're not just going off what somebody else has told you. Read God's word. Things will become clear to you, especially if you ask him. Ask him for some guidance, some clearance, some clarity before you read the word. Start in the New Testament. If you've never read before, a chapter a day keeps false teachers away. The book of John is a great one to start, or you can read all 4 gospels if you want. But the thing is, once you start, don't stop. Go all the way through to the end of Revelation. Don't be afraid of it. But keep asking the Lord, please reveal your word to me. Please reveal things to me. In your name, Christ Jesus, amen and amen. Best advice I can ever give anyone. So I have a lot of respect for people who are out in the mission field, the people who are being the hands and feet of Jesus, as they say, who are actually there online on the front lines. And it is a battle. It's a spiritual battle. And I want you to meet a man who, that's what he does. That's what he does. I don't want to hear from a missionary. I don't care about anything about that. Okay, well, if you decide the show isn't for you, sorry you feel that way, but this is what he does. His name is Bruce Wolff, and he's with Brigade Air. Check that out. That's a beauty. Mission Aviation Adventure Camps. How cool is this? I love this. I always wanted to get my pilot's license, and just has not happened, never did happen. Brigade Air teaching these kids how to fly and how to get out on the mission field, because there's a real shortage of pilots being able to fly in Bibles and other supplies on the mission field, which is some of it so remote that you're landing on a dirt strip. You know, it's kind of like it's right out of the movies, like this.
By the year 2030, there will be over 1 billion roadless people on planet Earth. That means no paved road to move materials or people in and out of where they live. Why is that an issue, roadless people? We take that for granted here in the Western Hemisphere. Most of missions work, church planting, Bible translation, is done in the majority world where there aren't any roads. Because of tsunamis, earthquakes, war, how does humanitarian aid, how do supplies, how does the gospel get through when the roads are gone? Missions aviation is how. A small plane can get into places where there are no roads. A small plane can bring medical relief, can bring supplies, can bring life where there's no other way to get there. To solve the problem of transportation and communications in missions work, a large chunk of that solution has been already taken care of with the advent of the Quest Kodiak. It's a new aircraft that was designed for missionary aviation. It's taken into account all of the needs, the lack of aviation fuel, the short airstrips, the higher payload, to more efficiently bring people and supplies in and out of those roadless communities. We now have the technology and aircraft to do this. There's just still one large remaining problem. Who's going to fly those Kodiaks? Who's going to fly that missions aircraft of the future? Where are these pilots, these humanitarian and missions aviation pilots, going to come from? Over the years, missions aviation organizations have depended on two large sources of recruitment, the military and the airline. Missions for years would pick the low-hanging fruit available with pilots that already had a high degree of training. Today, we have to throw the seed much earlier and grow those recruits. From the time that they're the age of 14 to 18, we plant the seeds in their lives in hopes that they will one day become a missionary aviator. Brigade Air fills that need by introducing 14 to 18-year-olds through our camping program, through our mentoring curriculum, the full picture of missionary aviation.
My name is Craig Hollander. I am Chief Pilot for Mission Aviation Fellowship in Kalimantan, Indonesia. Been here for 9 years, serving as pilot mechanic. I was first involved with Brigade Air in the Mission Aviation Adventure Camps in 2002. Had the opportunity to instruct one of those camps in Columbia, California. I think the biggest advantage of the Mission Aviation Adventure Camp is just introducing younger kids to the whole concept of missionary aviation. I personally had never heard of mission aviation while I was in junior high and high school. It wasn't until my fourth or fourth year of college that I actually heard about it. If I'd been introduced to it personally at an earlier age, I would have actually come here and been serving on the field about 3 years sooner. I think it's so important that we have more pilots and more mechanics in the future. Problem is, a lot of people just don't know that this kind of opportunity exists. And I really feel like God is calling young people. He was calling me even while I was in high school. I didn't know the specifics about missionary aviation. And if I had this kind of opportunity when I was a kid, it would have been just totally mind-blowing and eye-opening for me. So yeah, I would definitely encourage people to partner with Brigade Air. I just think it's a great ministry.
Brigade Air is necessary because it's countercultural. Brigade Air can do in a week what the church and the local youth group cannot do. We get them away from the electronics, away from the cell phones. We get them in the cockpit of an airplane with an experienced pilot. We enable them to hear God's voice that may be speaking to them, but they just can't hear it. Who's going to fly that missions aircraft of the future? The recruitment shortage can only be solved one way, and that's by introducing young people today to the needs globally in hopes that God will lead and provide in their lives, that they will train to solve the future needs of missionary aviation worldwide. Please become a partner to our ministry. Visit brigadeair.org and help us reach those billion roadless people.
I bet he's got stories. I'm looking forward to talking to him. Bruce Wolff is on Do Not Talk. Right before I bring him in, though, I wanted to invite you and ask you to please help this show grow by just liking this. Hit that like button, and then it helps with the whole algorithm thing. And if you comment down below, it all works. It's gotta be 6 words or less, or more though, or more, because 5 words or less, they count it as a bot. That's just the way it is now. It's just crazy. So you'd be helping this show grow and sharing it. Sharing it is the best thing you can do, because Facebook deleted all of my pages last summer for a little show I did about Pride Month. Seemed to tick off some people at Meta as I expose what a fraud and a scam that is. And it's right around the corner again. Oh, man, every year now. Brigade Air on the air everywhere on Do Not Talk. Are you ready? Hit it. I am really looking forward to hearing your stories. Hello, sir.
Hey, Charlie, great to be here.
I appreciate that. I'm glad you are. That was a good video there on your website, brigadeair.org. Well done. Really gets the message across now. When I was a fairly new Christian, I was looking into that. But the thing, I understand why you want to reach younger people, because you want them thinking this way and growing this way in the Lord's work from an early age, because life got in the way for me. Life got into the way for me because I was already in my 30s, working, responsibilities, owning a home, was single at the time, nobody to take care of my dogs or anything. I could, if I just gave up and went on the mission field. Well, Jesus said, if you put your hands to the plow, don't turn back and look. Don't be thinking about, just go for it. I turned back and looked. What happened? I never followed through. And I've always had this dream of flying. This would have been an extraordinary way to do it, but you got to get somebody when they're younger like that. So I think that's very smart that you're educating and bringing them up in God's field, mission work. How long you been doing that?
Well, let's see. I flew for a mission based in Tucson, Arizona, that flew in and out of Mexico for 6 or 7 years prior to starting Brigade Air in 2000. So that's been 25 years with Brigade Air and another 6 or 7 before that with the hands-on. And that was the exposure for me to the true need for new recruitment in this area of ministry. Aviation is just simply put the crucial, critical link. Where there's no infrastructure, there's no roads, as you just saw in the video. You don't wait around for infrastructure. That could take a couple hundred years in some places. So, the airplane's getting it done. Bible translation and church planting in the most remote reaches and frontier places that still occupy about 1 billion people on this planet.
And he told us to go. He told us to go wherever that is. Go. Let people know. Let everyone know. That is our job. That is our work here on earth. Getting people ready and introducing them to the salvation through Christ Jesus. That's our directive. That's what we were told to do. Not just to sit back and show up at church once a week and go, okay, I'm good. And then go on living how I was that guy. God, okay, God, you can take care of this part right here, but I got everything else. I got this over here. That was my relationship with him. It was ridiculous. I was one of those Christians. That's sad. I think about all the time that I wasted. But did you start off, were you a commercial airline pilot? Were you military? How'd you get this going?
No, pretty circuitously. So there's a story before the story. This is the real one here we're talking about now, is impacting young people to go out and do the thing. As you just said, man, I was just ready to sit here and listen because you're you're saying it all, man. It's great. We were told. So people who call themselves Christians call themselves part of the Church of Jesus Christ. Here in the States, unfortunately, they're missing a big piece of it.
Oh, yeah.
Which was our marching orders. Jesus didn't tell us to do it if you felt like it. He said, as our commander in chief, these are your orders. This is why you're here, is to take this gospel to every nation, to all tongues, to all peoples and tribes. Funny thing, there's an attachment to that. When that job's done, he said he'd come back. So maybe there's a relationship between what we're doing while we're sleeping at the wheel here and the return of Christ. So let's plug that into our thinking when we see current events today.
And there's a whole lot of cults and false
it.
religions. There's a whole lot of cults and false religions that are already out there on the mission field, leading people astray. And we never even think about going door to door, but that's what the early church did. That's what the apostles did, going to towns and literally just letting everybody know and preaching in the square. We don't do that.
That's a great segue because the first true missionary was the Apostle Paul. And if we read his story in the book of Acts, whew, here's a guy going around killing all the Christians he could. He was an on fire Jewish guy who said, we're not going to let this sect pollute our Jewish doctrine and practice. And he went around literally murdering Christians. And Christ got a hold of him in a very dramatic way, appearing to him as a bright light, scared the liver out of him. He was blind for quite a while. And that guy, as intense a person as he was, highly schooled in Greek and in Hebrew, under Gamaliel, and as a Pharisee in Jewish education, you couldn't stop him. And here's the segue. Back then, the way Paul got around to do that was on those cobblestone roads that the Romans had just built. So he could walk, and on foot, he traveled the Mediterranean on that Roman road system. So God in his omniscience introduces Paul and the gospel and the planting of the first century churches through that man only when he had access on an all-weather road that the Romans had built. Well, if we're going to wait for roads today, like I said earlier, it's going to be a while. So, the U.S., we got the gospel from people who came here on ships. We've got a big ocean on both sides, And so pilgrims and the early settlers came here and brought the gospel with them. In the United States, we know quite a bit about that early history. But again, it required transportation. So in these remotest places around the globe today that don't have an ocean connecting it, that don't have a road system, aviation's the only way to get the job done. So yes, that's what I've been doing for 35 years. And as I said, it was circuitous. My folks were missionaries, but honestly, I wanted nothing to do with it. So that's really what the book's about, is how in the world did God grab a guy like me and do such a U-turn? When I was fitting and fighting and screaming, I just did not want to do this because I saw how it was. It was pretty rough for me. My folks were missionaries. We were in Nigeria, and unfortunate for us, we got there just a year before the war with Biafra started. And so, they were shooting at us. Biafra, Africa's bloodiest coup, started in 1966. And it was just as oil was struck in the state of Biafra in the south. And the world's been it's now what, the fourth or fifth producer of crude oil ever since then. Well, we happened to be there when that all went down. And tribal factions and ethnic factions in the north and the south, you had predominantly Christian tribe, the Igbo people in the south. You had predominantly Muslim and other tribal religions in the north, and that's where Lagos was, still is. And so a war broke out, and anywhere from 1 to 3 million, we've never gotten a number of it, children were starved to death or chopped, women, children, men with machetes shot. Most of them were just starved out, though. And that all went down while we were there. It started. And so my dad, having been in the Navy first and then working for the Salvation Army, somehow that became a threat, and an assassin was sent onto the campus where my father was the principal of the Salvation Army Training College in Lagos, Nigeria. And 2 times in 3 months, our night watchman stopped an assassin on the campus sent there to take my dad out. So that was our cue. It was time to get out of Nigeria. We came back to the States in March of 1967. And there's a long
You had
story.
to be young. I'm guessing you're in your 60s. You had to be very young.
I was 8 years old when we came back from Africa. So it was formative. And for me, it's what they call a third culture kid. Mom and dad were born and raised in New York City. I was born in Greenville, South Carolina, but the family moved 27 times in 20 years, so I don't really know where I'm from. And now this event in Africa, after living in England for just less than a year prior to that, now we're in London, and come back to the U.S., but it's to my folks' home turf.
Why were you in England? Was this your parents are doing other mission work there, or?
Okay, I am telling it backwards. So
You said 27 years or 20. You moved 27 times in 20 years.
The family did, yes. So
wow.
That was, you know, since mom and dad got married. So my brothers and I were there for most of those. Couldn't tell you exactly how many, but we were in North and South Carolina. We were in Georgia. We were in Florida, several places in each of those states. And so, then in '65, my folks went to London. We sailed on the original. Yeah, that's making me feel old now. I don't know. The original Queen Elizabeth from New York Harbor in '65 to Southampton in England. And it was the centenary celebration of the Salvation Army then. So the Salvation Army was 100 years old that year. And it happened that just coincided with my folks' arrival to do training that the Salvation Army was requiring before they shipped them off, before they shipped us off to Lagos, where my dad was the principal of that Bible college. So while we were there, Royal Albert Hall in London, look it up. Queen Elizabeth II was 39 years old, and she was at the event. It was 10 days of celebration because Salvation Army is a pretty big thing in London. They've done more good for people than the government.
Oh, I love Salvation Army. I love them. Love them. I've done work for them too.
Yeah. So my folks were with the Salvation Army. We met Queen Elizabeth there in her entourage coming out of Royal Albert Hall.
Wow. You actually met her.
Yeah, we were standing there with a bunch of British Boy Scouts. My dad saw the exit path that the entourage was going. We raced down the stairs from up on the second level and stood there with a whole pack of 100 or more British Boy Scouts. And as she came by with her white glove, she was patting all the little boys on the head as she walked through. So it didn't mean a thing at the time. But so, yeah, that was England for us. And where we lived was just on the outskirts of where Charles Dickens lived and did all of his writing back in the 1800s. So Crystal Palace Park. So these places, I tell you, I got quite a tour and education as a kid on stuff I knew nothing about, didn't care about then either. But, you know, that's where life took us. So from there, we went to Nigeria. And as I said, in our first year was when the war with Biafra broke out. And I mentioned earlier, they still coin it today, Africa's bloodiest coup. And it was over oil. In Africa, you know, they change their names like we change our socks. And it's usually over diamonds or gold or oil. And it never changes. So
yeah, there was no such nation of Nigeria until like the 50s or 60s, I think.
Well, the British in the late 1800s drew a line on a map. You know, they were pillaging the place for ivory, for oil, for whatever resources they had. And they're still doing it. They're doing
good
it
at
today.
That. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stick with your talents.
You know, yeah, they're good at it, right? So, you know, this line was so arbitrary, but they knew nothing about the tribal histories. But there's over 240 dialects in different languages just in Nigeria. And you got major tribal groups. You've got Hausa, Fulani, you've got the Igbo in the south, you've got Yoruba in the north. British didn't bother to educate themselves on any of this. So just drawing a line through the middle of everybody's land and territory, it was a fight waiting to happen. And it's still going.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're absolutely right. We saw that in the Middle East, where England and France did the same thing, carving up the Middle East. And all of a sudden the Kurds, who had their own country, don't. And next thing you know, they're a nomadic tribe. Well, wait, what just happened? There's huge, long decades, centuries of history of that kind of crap going on.
Yeah, and what you saw happen last fall with President Trump and his clear signal to Nigeria, because they are the lead murderer of Christians on the planet right now. Yep. And that came through a fellow named Mike Arnold, who wrote a book on the topic, and all of a sudden it hurtled him into the front lines, into the headlines. And Mike's book shook things up, and President Trump got a hold of that and said, oh, yeah, I don't think so. And threatened them, cutting off funding to Nigeria if their government didn't intercede, because Christians are just getting mowed down with this, with the Islamic Jihad that's still going on there.
Oh yeah.
Well, those elements were there in 66 and 67 when we lived there.
Yeah. And they don't waste bullets and killing you quickly with a shot to the head. They're big on torture and coming up with horrific ways to torture and murder people. They're just a barbaric, horrific, violent cult is what.
So we skedaddled out of there for that same kind of thing going on back there in 67.
Unfortunately, they can't leave. Most of them are, a lot of them don't have the resources to be able to bribe an official to be able to even get out of the country. It's awful, man.
Because as you can imagine, that left quite a taste in my mouth. It's like missions. Yeah, right. Why would I sign up for more of that? Right.
Were you flying from an early age?
No. No. So you asked if it was military or airlines, neither of the above. So, I had to get square with God myself. You mentioned about a detour that you took, and the Lord might have been leading you in that direction long before he was me. So, I had to work through a lot of stuff over those years. It wasn't just the moves. My dad had a lot of issues from his own childhood that he just lived and did not resolve. He was a hit first, ask questions later kind of guy. So that was kind of hard to take as a kid, listen to him preach on Sundays. And then the rest of the week, the way he treated my mom and myself and two brothers, it was a setback, let's say.
We could swap stories there too, buddy.
How much time do you have?
I get it. How old were you when you started flying though? How did you get into that?
So once I resolved the stuff, that seeking God's guidance is like, what do you want me to do? I got to college. I went to King's College, upstate New York, back in the day, and a Christian liberal arts school. And I began to deal with a lot of this stuff from my past. And I really wanted what God wanted. I wanted to follow. I wanted to trust and obey. And I began to open my mind and let God into that emotional part that was still in there that really hadn't ever been resolved from way back. So as God began to move and heal, I began to open myself up more and more and said, I've got technical skills. I could see myself working with my hands and doing this kind of stuff, having lived there. I also had gone back following King's College. I spent a short period in Swaziland in South Africa on my own in 1981.
I've heard that's beautiful there.
It is. It's gorgeous. It's also, but when I was there, most of the pineapple fields, which is most of Swaziland, was owned by Dole. Dole pineapples were everywhere. And I tell you, I ate about one a day while I was there. I wasn't supposed to, but I did anyway. So went back to test the waters and just see, is this really what you want, Lord? And then later, the revelation that I'm better with my hands than I am speaking and writing and preaching and all of that stuff. That just wasn't my thing. So after college, I married, had a family, and then I went back to school. I went to Moody Aviation down in East Tennessee. And it's part of Moody Bible Institute. And the aviation program was designed specifically to train guys to go into missionary aviation. The school was started in 1946. So it's been around a long time. They're still going. It's not in Tennessee anymore. It's in Spokane, Washington now. But we settled in, and for 3 years of Moody, it was airframe and power plant, the mechanic certificate as an aircraft pilot first, and then 2 years of flight training, which takes you from private license, commercial license, instrument rating, and then all of the electives like multi-engine and flight instructor rating and all of that you want to do after you finish their program. So, and then they shoo you in. You have a choice as a free agent to find a sending agency, a mission sending agency that needs you to do this kind of work. So I pursued with the small group that was based in Tucson, Arizona, moved my family there, and worked for those guys for 6 or 7 years, flying in and out of Mexico in support of church planting and Bible translation work in Mexico. And so it's while I was there, I learned, wow, the recruitment for this it's unheard of. I mean, nobody knows about this. I mean, this is the first time you're learning a lot of this, I'm sure, today. And we're sort of the church's best kept secret, and that's not intentional. It's just, you know, your time and effort and fundraising and everything goes into doing the work. Somebody else is doing the marketing, apparently. So now that I've been at this for 35 years, I find myself doing some of that writing and speaking, and maybe some more what we'd call marketing about it. We got to stoke interest, because it's still an unheard of but a vitally needed area of ministry, and we're trying to do that with young people.
I think it's extraordinary. I want to know more. I want to encourage people to follow through and go to brigadeair.org. I want to encourage you to please do that and find out what they're doing, and get Bruce's book. Tell us about your book.
Well, I touched on a few icebergs just now in the last 10 or 15 minutes, and the fully developed icebergs are all in that book. So yeah, all the stuff about Dad and how I got through that, and the step-by-step. There's a chapter, chapter 3 is called The Lamp. And what that's about is based on,
my apologies,
is based on a Psalm in Scripture, Psalm 119, 105. It says, "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." Well, it looks like just Hebrew poetry, say the same thing twice with different words, right? When I was in flight school, I started to learn something about static versus dynamic stability. And it dawned on me that psalm seems to illustrate that, but it's hiding in plain sight. Lamp unto feet, that's when you're standing still looking down and you see your feet underneath you, and that's all you see. This lamp is a little tiny 1-inch flame on an oil lamp, you know. And if you're standing still, that's all you see, lamp under your feet. It's not until you move and take a step that it becomes a light unto your path. And unfortunately, a lot of Christians today, like you said earlier, they go to church Sunday, the lamp's under the feet, it's shining, what the Word of God says, there it is. You got a lot of light on a lot of different issues over time, right? But do you ever trust and obey the light that you've been given and take that step in obedience? If you stand still, all you ever have is a lamp under your feet. Once you start to take steps of obedience and follow and trust, guess what? Then there's enough light for what? One more step. And you take that one, and you take the next and the next. And before long, you look behind yourself and go, wow, look at that path God just brought me through, an increment at a time, and he did miracles. He did miracles doing it. So that's kind of where my story pieces together, from the childhood piece to the family going back to, moving with me to go through flight school, and then raising financial support and moving out to Arizona and flying in the mountains of Mexico for those years. And then starting Brigade Air on nothing. I didn't have money, but 3 of us got together and said, this is a God project. And I believe through all of Scripture, when God directs you to do something, he empowers his own projects without fail. But you got to trust him, and you got to take it slow. It's not very American. We don't get that 50,000 candle power light to, look 2 miles in front of us. No, he wants you to trust him, and he's got this. But we don't learn to trust him unless we're willing to take the risk on what he says. All right. That doesn't mean bungee jumping, not that kind of risk, but just risking. I'm not in control. I'm going to let him be in control. And I'm going to take a small step and trust that he's not leading me off a cliff. Take that step, and you go, wow, you keep that up after a while, and you realize he's everything the Bible said he was. He's good. He's loving. He's wise. He knows everything. He owns everything. And if you just trust him, guess what? He pays the bills. That's Matthew 6. Seek first my kingdom and my righteousness, and I'll give you everything you need to do it. He's been faithful to me for all these years, and Brigade Air is a living example of how God leads and provides in the life of somebody willing to trust him.
There's another scripture I love in the Bible that I hear Christians quote all the time. Well, God wants good things for me. So it says in the Bible, the Lord wants good things for us, for those who love him. And I said, well, there's a comma there. Do you know what the rest of the verse says?
That's Romans 8. Yeah.
No,
To those who are called according to his purposes.
Exactly. And we
Yeah.
don't do that. Well, I love him, so he's going to make good things happen for me. Are you called according to his purpose? Because that's when it's going to happen.
Are you
Either way,
obeying what the word teaches? There's the litmus test, right? So,
right, right.
unfortunately, like you said earlier, I mean, we got all kinds of churches, and then God is presented by an awful big swath of what I call false religion. It's not what the Bible teaches. He's some divine dispensing machine. He's like a, you know, he pops out you put a quarter in and out comes a can of soda or a lollipop. That's not God. That's a dispensing machine.
They pray to him like he's an ATM.
Yeah.
I need something, God. Throw it my way. We are all called according to his purpose. It's no accident that we are following his son, Christ Jesus, and that we've given our life to him. If you just raised your hand in the church when the pastor asked, all eyes closed, everybody looking down, raise your hand if you want to be saved. And what have you done with it from there? The talents, I love that analogy, that story from Jesus about the master who went away and left the three servants. One got 1 talent or coin. The other one got 3 and one got 5, right? If I remember right. And what happened to the one when the master came back, and the other 2 invested, did things with it, made the boss some more money. And then there was that third one who only got 1 coin, who buried it and didn't do anything with it. What happened to that servant? It didn't turn out well for him. What are you doing with the talent that God has given us when he gives us all talents? We got the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Are you squelching it? How many Christians have I talked to who have said, well, I don't, because I'll talk, I'm at work. I've paid the price for, I lost a 6-figure income gig in San Francisco, doing morning radio there when I first got saved, because I started going on the air talking about Christ and Jesus and that I was a Christian now. I started talking about it. They freaked out. I got fired because I became a Christian and actually talked about it on the radio. And then I have Christians, saying, yeah, I don't wear my religion on my sleeve. If I were you, I'd be putting on a tank top with no sleeves at all, because you better start sharing, because we're going to have to answer. We're all going to have to answer. What did you do with the talent that I gave you? What'd you do? Just go to church every week? Good on you, except for when a good football game was on. God will forgive me. I got to go to this football game. Going to church does not save you. But as Jesus said, if you love me, follow my commandments. That's what we do. And you got to actually read the Bible before. Don't let somebody else tell you what it says. Read it for yourself. But I want to hear some of your stories about flying. You've been in the mission field and things happen. I've been on that little, what we call puddle jumper, more than once. Once, just a vacation, I went down to Costa Rica, and I wound up on one of those areas that was there were no roads. Only way you could get there was one of those small planes landing on a dirt path. And then from there, we went to a boat, and we had to follow this river for a long time till we got out to the ocean. And then that's where that camp was. And at 10 p.m., generator was off, lights out, everybody go to bed, go to your tent. And that was quite an adventure. That was my first time seeing the kind of airport and landing strips that you're talking about. Now, that was actually maintained. Now, imagine areas where you're lucky if you find an open space like that. That's not going to, you got to think about grass or weeds, any kind of vegetation there, because that'll catch up a plane that's coming in, caught on the wheel, boom, you're nose diving. There's all kinds of things to think about and consider. To give us some of these stories.
Well, you said those strips are maintained. Well,
just cleared of brush.
Yeah, right. And
not paved. They were dirt.
Of course, yeah, dirt, gravel. So in order for aviation to be that crucial link, you know, a cleared stretch of jungle, or if it's in an arid region, you say puddle jumper. Now, there's a lot of stories that pop into my head with that, because there's the stories of what I was flying mostly was in a Cessna turbocharged 206. A Cessna 206 was six passenger airplane. And that's kind of been the workhorse of the mission aviation fleet for a long, long time, until in the past 15 years, that airplane that was in the video at the beginning, the Quest Kodiak, came as a solution to land and take off out of any of the airstrips that a 206 could get into. Only it could carry 3 times, sometimes 4 times the payload.
Good.
It's a turbine engine. It's a turboprop airplane with a 750 horsepower Pratt Whitney engine. So
bigger tires.
It's to people who aren't familiar with the plane, it reminds them of a Cessna Caravan. Caravan couldn't do what this airplane does, because a Caravan has a pretty wide wing, and its payload, it's built for a different purpose. This plane was built as a workhorse to carry in many more times the gross weight of what a Cessna 206 could do into the same strips without having to rebuild them all and widen them and lengthen them for another airplane. It was a new design. The wing was designed very uniquely, and I'll say it was designed by Tom Hamilton of Stoddard Hamilton Aircraft Company up in Washington. He's a West Coast guy. He was building airplanes for a long, long time before this, and he and a former missionary, retired missionary from MAF, Mission Aviation Fellowship, one of the large sending agencies based in. They were in California. They were in Redlands for over 50 years, and now they're up in near Cascade, Idaho. They're just outside of Boise. So those two guys got together on a napkin drawing back in the 80s and said, man, how are we going to solve this? And that's what turned into the Quest Kodiak. So that airplane still helps solve it, but it's now using jet fuel, not avgas, the blue stuff that is getting more expensive, and places around the globe it hasn't been available for many years. So in order to keep going, you've got to have something with a turbine engine that flies on jet fuel. Well, that's what this turboprop airplane does. The wing was designed shorter and wider, and it's called a discontinuous leading edge. There's a lot of aerodynamic features built into that airplane so that it can do this slow and heavy, what's called short takeoff and landing.
And when you say shorter and wider, that can go both ways, or two ways. You're talking about the width of the wing, and when you say wide, is that the length of
fore to aft? Yeah, leading edge to trailing edge. Yes, it's okay. The whole
and
design.
So
of
the width is the depth of it from you said fore to aft. Fore to aft is front to back.
And the length of the wing is side to side.
Port and starboard. I'm trying to remember these terms. Okay, so port and starboard, that's what we would think normally is the length of the wing, right?
Yeah. Yes, the width, okay. How wide.
Most people probably are not even interested in this at all, but I am fascinated with it. So
it's okay. The idea is that this plane was from scratch a new design to serve this purpose. Okay, so now we have that. Well, the plane I was flying was the last generation before that. They're still out there. The Cessna 206 is still used every day all over the world, right? And in this enterprise of missionary aviation and humanitarian aviation, it's still the one that's, as long as you can get the blue fuel, the 100 low lead gas, it's 100 octane blue stained fuel, not like the gas in our cars, which is red in color. So that's the fuel that's getting harder and harder to find because it's not being produced like it used to. So that's a problem. It becomes a limitation. So the point is, all of these new design features went into this airplane, taking all of these issues into consideration right from the drawing board. And it was made special. It was made custom for missions aviation work. So I got into it, like I said, through, circuitously. It took time. Then I served in Mexico.
That's the second time you've used that word, by the way, and I have no idea what it means.
Circuitously?
Yeah.
The long way around, the long way home, in a circuit. I went not a direct straight line, but
look at all the things I'm learning. Look at all the
Right,
things I've learned from Bruce.
yeah, I went around the block a few
Circuitously. Okay.
times. Yeah, it's just a circuit tour. Let's call it that. So
Okay.
it wasn't
Good, I like
straight
that.
line,
Yeah.
shortest distance. It was probably the longest possible distance between 2 points.
Okay.
So yeah, it took many years. But anyway, that's I don't feel bad. Moses was 80 before God did something with him. Abraham was 100 before Isaac was born. So I'm okay. It's all right. I
Okay.
wasn't quite that old. So, but yeah, then the Lord, the thing about the lamp again is as you take in those small steps and you keep moving, you're wanting to trust him and obey him. So you say, well, I think he's saying, let me go this way. And you do. And guess what? While you're moving, it's like my mom used to say, it's easier to steer a moving car than a parked one. Now you got to be about our age for that to make any sense. Because mom learned to drive in an old Willie's Jeep in New York City and trying to parallel park that thing with traffic.
Wow.
Oh,
With
right?
the 3-speed on the floor.
And popping
Oh,
the
my
clutch,
goodness.
and people are trying to push you out of the way before you take the space. That's where that thought comes from, is trying to grunt on that steering wheel and trying to cut that from full right to full left.
No
while
power
you're
steering.
moving.
Oh, no.
No. So once you're rolling and moving, God will give you a bump to the left or the right and go, nah, not quite there, but over here a little bit. But it's up to you to get moving. That's that lamp under the feet, light under the path thing. It's a choice. It's an obedience piece. It's recognizing God for who he is, and he's not a divine lollipop in the sky to make me feel good, right? That is not the God of Scripture. So when you enter into that relationship of faith and trust with him, and you do it through his son, Jesus, that you're very clear about, you don't just wake up one day and say, okay, God, I'll do it your way. You first have to own that you are a sinner. That's what the Bible teaches. That's a word you're not allowed to use today either. But here we are talking religion and politics today, right?
What I do, brother.
You're a sinner, and according to God, you deserve death because you can never meet up to his holy, high standards, right? But he's loving too. He's not just some guy with rules. It's like, this is the way, this is his character, who he is. And in order to relate to him, it's got to be on his terms. So we learn, like you said, read the Bible, figure that part out, and then come to him and confess. That means to agree with God. I agree with what he says about me. Now I'm getting close here, right? I start to agree with him. Then I what? Repent. That's another word we're not allowed to use, but it's all over the Bible. That means to turn, right? To change your mind. So first agree with God about who you are and who he is, then change your mind about the way you've been doing life. Guess what? You accept the sacrifice of his son, Jesus, and his resurrection. And now you begin to live by faith. And it's a process of growing. It's a process of learning to trust him more and more. And all of a sudden you find yourself on a completely different path than you used to be.
Faith is an act, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So if anything, the book is about that process of how I got there from where I started. Now, it happened that my folks were missionaries, but it was the worst reason for me to go into missions was what I experienced as a kid as a missionary brat. But I got over it.
You went anyway. Yeah. It's like the poor preacher's kid. You didn't answer my story or my search for.
I'll get there. Yeah. Okay. So the 206 story.
I love hearing these kind of stories. I love it.
Well, yeah. Well, the first airplane story, I was long before I was a pilot, and that's the first chapter in the book. Actually, is when I was on my way to doing this short-term thing and kind of testing the waters and saying, "Is this really what you want me to do, Lord?" So after I graduated from college in '81. I went and spent several months in Swaziland, working as a volunteer with a missionary group out there, and just flying there on the airlines. I mean, from JFK to Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam through Zaire to Johannesburg. So, I mean, that's crossing the equator and all the way down. I think that leg was 15 hours just from Amsterdam. So all that went stunningly. Well, KLM Airlines, all that, right? So then the last 50-minute flight, 50, not quite an hour, was from Johannesburg to Manzini, Swaziland, the next country over.
That's a
towards the
small little
Indian
plane
Ocean.
you're on.
Well, it was a twin engine. It was a twin engine British turboprop commuter.
Okay.
It probably sat about 30 people. And it wasn't even an hour flight, as I said. It's South African Airways offered that flight twice a day, same route. You know, it's usually hot and clear. It's a lot of high desert there. And we're crossing mountains to go into Swaziland. Well, yeah. Turbulence.
Going
doesn't
over
begin to
desert mountains,
describe.
man. The updrafts, you're bouncing around like crazy.
Well, then there's what happened to us. So and back then it was just a curtain separating the crew up in the front from the passengers. Without a whisper or warning over the intercom, we hit some sort of a pocket. Now, this is before I was flying, before I was a pilot. And the best description I've heard since then is it's what pilots today would call cumulogranite clouds.
Granite, not a good word.
Well, it felt like you hit granite.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I
We
figured.
lost thousands of feet and dropped not in a dive, but
I've heard about this
down.
happening. Suddenly
And-
dropping out of the sky.
And the lady
No
who
lift under the wings. And you're still
Well-
going forward, but there's no lift under the wings. It's
Yeah.
just like there's suddenly a vacuum sucking you down towards the
it's a
earth.
downdraft. Yeah, there's a
And it's
downdraft.
violent. You drop
Mhm.
fast.
And when that happened, the gal with the drink cart, we called a stewardess back in those days, she came off the floor with that stainless steel cart, and
Exactly.
it was her shoulders were pinned to the ceiling as we were falling straight down. And when we hit the bottom of that air pocket, it was as though we hit the ground. And she slammed down, and she was bloodied and crying. And there was, back in that day, it was real china and real silverware, British tea time, right? And yeah, it was a mess. And some people were cursing, some were vomiting. And the funny part in that chapter was in the British design, left side was smoking and right side was non-smoking back then. So
I remember those days. I remember my dad was a smoker when they started in California, put it in non-smoking sections. We had to sit in the smoking section. It didn't matter where you were sitting. Smoke seems to travel.
I got off that plane and
So
I
funny.
thought, what in the world have I done? This is my first experience on my own and trying to test things out and say, God, you're really leading this way. And I almost died in that airplane. I mean, the wings and the engines were still attached, and how, I don't know. But anyway, that was not me. But one time coming back from
It's like a rogue wave. It's like a rogue wave. If you're a sailor, it's a very similar kind of thing. Nobody can explain what happened. How did this happen? Where did that come from? What was that?
Well, they can explain it, and that was the hard part to swallow. Was this crew up in the front made that same flight twice every day, 5 days a week. That hour flight, 45-minute flight out and back across those same mountains. The prevailing wind is always off the Indian Ocean. When you're flying east, the wind is in your face to the west, and there it is over that ridge. And they experience what's called a mountain wave. It was there. It didn't change, but they were surprised by this. And they never even made a call to the back to say, folks, you need to tighten your seatbelt. So I was lost on how
let the flight crew know. Let that poor stewardess know. Oh, that's awful, man.
So anyway, that was that, and that was somebody else's real story. But I was coming back from El Paso to Tucson with one of our 206s with the mission, and there was scheduled maintenance for another one of our 206s, which had been in country with another one of our families that was based in Chihuahua City. We did all the maintenance back in Tucson, so we'd bring them out of Mexico and do it at our hangar in Tucson. And so I took a fresh airplane, let's call it, one that had just been through an inspection, and met up with the other pilot in El Paso. He came up out of Chihuahua City with his plane. We swapped airplanes. He took the fresh one back into Chihuahua, and he continued to do the work he normally does. I took the stale airplane from El Paso back to Tucson, and that's where things got interesting. Was it was, 90 degrees. I was in a t-shirt when I left El Paso. And the closer I got to home base, which was Ryan Airfield, just 12 nautical miles past Tucson International Airport. So, just west of it, a squall had been developing. I saw it building as I was heading farther west. So I knew I was going to be running into weather. And all the reports were it was a violent thunderstorm. So you don't tangle with them. You certainly don't file IFR and fly instruments and hope for the best.
No, especially in a small plane. If you can't fly around the whole weather pattern, you land until it passes by, huh?
Well, I was just the flight line and the time left and the time, speed, and distance of that leg of the flight. I was just going to make it back to where our base was in Ryan Field if everything had gone normally. Well, I get to Tucson International first, and one of the things Moody went out of their way to teach guys doing this kind of flight was the kind of habits they don't teach you just in normal private pilot training everywhere else that you go. Your training at Moody will save your life, and it did again in this instance, because part of their training was if you're going to switch fuel tanks in an airplane, in all of them, of course the big ones, a lot of this is automated, but there's still a variety of fuel tanks. They're in the wings, they're in the center of the airplane, depending on if it's a Boeing, there's a center fuel tank, and there's wing air tanks. In a Cessna, there's usually 2 large tanks in each wing, one in each wing. And so you have to manage your fuel through that flight. And that means time and distance and how much you've consumed in order for the plane to stay balanced in flight. You don't just suck one wing dry and leave the other one full, because now you're fighting the weight of that side is heavier.
Interesting. I'd never even considered that. Wow.
Well, go get some flight training. You'll learn all about it.
I want to. I've dreamt of that for so long.
Well, keep dreaming. Yeah. So you got to manage that. If it's a 30 minutes on each side or an hour, whatever it is. So what Moody taught us to do was, if you're going to switch tanks, burn it into your head, no matter where you are or what the airplane is or what the conditions are. Switch it, it's common sense when you think about it, over a place that you could land if you had to. Because
you got 2 fuel pumps to consider here. One of my old Ford pickup trucks had dual tanks, and it was notorious that one would always go out.
This is not like that. This is 2 separate tanks with a valve to control where the fuel comes from, but it's
just one fuel pump,
one engine-driven fuel pump up in the front,
okay.
Right?
Okay.
So those 2 tanks drain into. I know listeners don't want to hear all this, but it's a header tank that those 2 tanks drain into first, and then it pumps into the engine up in the front. So you got this turbocharged, 325 horsepower, air-cooled engine up there in the front, and you're cruising in that airplane at about 160 miles an hour. And so in order to switch the tank, you got to lean down, and there's a valve on the floor there between the pilot and co-pilot seat. So you reach down and you turn it from the one tank pointing to let's say it was on the left tank, and I'm switching to the right tank now. And unfortunately for me, the design of that fuel pump, the fuel valve rather, goes from left to right, but first it passes through, I don't know why they did this, the off position. So you do it quickly, and you don't lollygag. The engine doesn't quit.
Because if you do, the engine quits.
If you stop in the off position, well, that's just silly, right? Why would you do that? Well, for me that day, I was switching from left to right, and the fuel selector handle came off in my hand, and I'm holding it and going, oh, that's not good. I had no idea what position that valve was in when the handle came off. Was it still on the left? Had I gotten it to the right, or was it somewhere closer to the off position? So now I'm leaning over, my instrument panel's right in front of my nose, and I'm watching what's called.
There's no co-pilot. You're by yourself.
No, well, you don't need one on these flights in this plane, but there's a manifold pressure gauge in front of you, and that's your first indicator. Is it's a turbocharged, so it's manifold pressure gauge on there, and it's usually up in the 30 inches of manifold pressure. And if that needle starts to flicker, you got an issue, and it did. and my engine quit. So I was, you know, I had a lot of fuel on board. I just couldn't get to it. And again, God's providence in the training at Moody for me, that at that moment, if I hadn't done this very close to the Tucson International Airport, I was still within gliding distance of those main runways. And it's just a commercial airport. There were 2 jets getting ready to take off out of there to beat that storm.
Yeah. So if they call you off and say, no, that runway's not clear, you're not going to be able to do that.
Well, when I yell Mayday, I own the airport. That's another way the rules work. So these 2 guys were taxiing out for takeoff. I saw them, and about that time, and I'm watching this, and the engine quits, and now my propeller's perfectly still in front of the airplane, but I'm at about 4,000 feet with plenty of room.
Sure got quiet, didn't it? Sure got quiet.
It got very quiet. Now it's a glider. It's a glider. It still flies beautifully, just quieter. And you do have to find a place to put it down. So why not put it on the runway right there? You know?
That'd be nice. Yeah.
So that's what I did, and it ended very uneventfully. And of course, over ATC, they're asking the airplane call sign. They said, "Will you be needing equipment today?" And that's language for, is there going to be a fire when you put this thing on the ground? And do we need to get foam trucks and all that? And I said, negative on the equipment. We're fine. I had it under control. I knew I could make the runway, and I did, and just glided to a stop and pulled off. But they went ahead as a precaution and called out all these fire trucks. So here's these guys in flame suits, and now it's raining sideways, and temperature had dropped from 95 when I left El Paso. Now it's like 50.
Because the storm is here.
And it's wet, and I'm in a t-shirt, and so this whole cadre shows up here and around the airplane. You know, when I came to a stop, it was obvious there was nothing wrong with it. It just wasn't running. They didn't know what happened. And so the poor gal who was the TSA and the authority for the airport authority, she's dressed like a police officer, and she comes with a clipboard and a female cop, and she comes and she's got glasses, and it's raining so hard she can hardly see me with water drooling down her glasses. And she leans over, and it must have been her first day dealing with something like this. She didn't know what was happening, if it was going to be a crisis. I mean, there's fire trucks there. They were expecting something more dramatic.
It was a slow day. It was exciting. They wanted something to do.
But this is how a missionary writes a newsletter at the end of that month to all the supporters and tells this story. But mine always ended with a bit of a twist at the end. And this one tells the story of this poor lady coming up to the airplane. And I hop out, and it's raining, and I'm under the wing, and she's soaked, and she's coming up, and she has her clipboard. She's going to take a statement from me and check ID, et cetera, et cetera. So the first thing she says isn't, "May I see your license?" She said, "Do you have a pilot's license?" And now these guys are standing right behind her and watching. And I said, "No, ma'am, but I always did want one." And of course, this row of firemen start cracking up. They got it. She didn't. She's just staring at me like, well, what do I do now anyway? So yeah, God was with me. And I'm, again, the basic training I had at Moody is what I stuck to that day. And if I hadn't, I don't know where I'd have put that thing down, but
you had to be high. You had to be still very high altitude to be able to coast all that way, because I can't imagine why you would switch tanks if you were that close to the airport. You must have still been a ways out, but you had enough altitude that you figured you could glide in.
Yeah, I wasn't real high because the clouds that were developing as I progressed to the west were getting lower and lower as this system. I was getting closer and closer to it. So, you know, I still had a couple thousand feet above the ground, and it was plenty to glide in there. It wasn't a risk but again, the credit goes back to why I went to Moody to get this training. And that's one of the reasons I'm still here and that came through so many times while I was flying in and out of these rough strips down in Mexico that it's a God thing. It's like, if you're going to do it right. So,
you ever been greeted by any unfriendlies when you're out on the mission field flying in?
Well,
like drug cartels.
Oh yeah, we shared a lot of airstrips down there with known drug runners, and that's just how it was.
Oh yeah.
In fact, it was connections of the mission that I worked for that had actually built these runways. And listen, you know, these people in a lot of these places, I'm speaking for the, you know, the 80s and 90s, they're growing stuff. And yeah, it's illegal, and it's a problem of, if they didn't grow those, the poppy plants and the pot and everything down there, they're feeding their families. And in a lot of places down there, that's their only option if they want to eat. And so it's so destitute. And so it was a live and let live thing. We're not law enforcement. The federales and the local aduana, the airport comandante, whoever was in charge in that area, knew where there were drug runners. And so that wasn't our issue. We just kept our nose clean and, you know, live and let live. And we were supporting the missionaries and the church work going on. And it did come to a clash on a couple of instances with some of our guys on some of these airstrips. But the Lord protected, and always got our plane back.
You get taken off your aircraft at gunpoint. I'm sure you've heard those stories.
Sure.
Now you've dedicated your life after having actually done it and being trained, like, sounds like one of the best places you could ever learn to fly in the missions field like this, which is very different. And you decided you wanted to share it with others, and you wanted to encourage them because, you know, as I learned when I first started looking into all this, there's a tremendous shortage of pilots in the mission field. They got the planes even. I hadn't even considered the fuel. I'd never even thought about that. It's not like you can pull up at a Valero and fill up in the 83 octane. You can't do that. You got to have special formulated fuel. And you were talking about aviation fuel. That's 100 octane. And now it's jet fuel if you have a turboprop. You can't just find that anywhere. And you're not around an airport. So you got to ship that in too. This is a huge undertaking doing the Lord's work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But again, where he directs, he provides for. You know, someone used to say to me, God always empowers his own projects. So, you know, you can come up with your greatest idea, but if it didn't start through prayer and the word and asking God, how does he want to solve this problem? Go to him directly. Look, he created everything there is by speaking words. I think he can do it. You know, That's the problem with those of us who do follow him, is he's too small most of the time. We forget. It's so easy. We're so preoccupied with, you know, the ABCs, attendance, buildings, and cash, you know, that we just forget, wait a minute. My Heavenly Father made everything I can see and everything I can't see with words. He speaks and things happen. So if I'm coming to him on his terms and I've trusted him, his promises are all over that Bible, and I stand on them. And that's the only way Brigade Air, those stories are in there, how it was funded, how people came and volunteer pilots. Listen, we did this in 21 states and 6 foreign countries. We've had just about 200 week-long camps in our first 23 years.
How many countries?
6. With the U.S., Canada, Hungary, Romania, Eleuthera, Bahamas, and Ecuador. So about 200 week-long camps, usually about 12 campers, small group on purpose, with 2 or 3 pilots and 2 airplanes, all volunteers.
And it's hands-on.
Loaned aircraft. We owned one. We have one Cessna that was donated to us, and it became a community project. In fact, Franklin Graham gave us a very generous donation to retrofit and rebuild that airplane. And MAF donated aircraft radios. Mercy Air in South Africa gave us a GPS system that they didn't need anymore. So the whole community came together. The paint was donated from Frito-Lay Company with leftover paint after they had painted their fleet of biz jets. And so one thing after another added up. We had this gorgeous airplane that was donated. It was older, but very low time, and it looked brand new. That was in the video too, that you just saw at the beginning. So we had that plane, kind of our flagship for doing camps predominantly on the East Coast. But then all the others were loaned, borrowed aircraft where a guy says, here's the keys, bring it back without denting it, please. And he gets a tax write-off from us because we're a nonprofit. And, it cuts down on some of his overhead, right? And then the volunteer pilots, which we carefully screened, here's the punchline. We had over 4,000 kids in 21 states and 6 foreign countries, never had an accident, never had a bruised knee, never had any dented metal. And that is, again, God's word. Psalm 4, verse 8. For you alone, O Lord, cause me to dwell in safety. And that was written by the words of King David again, a guy who knew how to swing a sword. He was a warrior, all right? He had shed a lot of blood in his days, but you alone, O Lord, cause me to dwell in safety. Only God could do that. But it was, again, through trusting and obeying, and he kept up his end of the bargain, which is let me do the part I'm responsible for and trust him to do his part.
So these kids, I'm calling them kids because I'm over 30, and anyone under 30 automatically becomes a kid. Deal with it. That's what you get when you get older. You get the privilege of calling everybody a kid. You got these kids that are probably in ages from where to where on average.
Depending on the specific camp, but 13 to 18 or 14 to 18 in some places, because we did this through partnerships. So
they're very young. So they don't have their pilot's license.
Oh,
maybe
no.
Some do.
Well, yeah, you got to be 16 to log time, according to the FAA, towards a certificate of rating. So minimum of 16. We actually had a young man who had been waiting since he was 9. His story is in the book. It's in the back. The last several chapters are what we call the produce aisle. And it's all of there's some pretty hairy stories in there about different camps we did. One of them in Florida back in the day was a wayward son of the caretakers of the camp that was hosting our program. Was an adopted. He was a Russian child adopted when he was about 8 or 9, and the boy just wasn't right. And after he was 18,
that boy ain't right.
That's right. His parents kicked him out of the house, and it was a rough story. But that story's in the book. We were all bunked down there in this camp in Florida, and we only learned this early the next morning when the camp director got me up at about 4:30. I was supposed to be up at 5:30, and came to his office, and he showed me something on the computer that had just come out over that kid had taken a .22 rifle and murdered his landlord that night, who was a paraplegic lady who owned the house. He murdered her, stole her van, went to the gas station, which was 1 mile from the entrance of the camp. He did a drive off, didn't pay for the fuel, and he had made it as far as the driveway of the camp where we were all sleeping that night. He was going in there to kill his 2 adoptive parents and anybody else that he could. And a 911 call.
I did not expect that.
Okay,
wow.
Those are the kinds of stories in there, man.
Wow.
But there's a lot of stuff. So how God has protected and rescued and preserved, it's just one after another, because guess what? I was vulnerable, and that's the whole point. You can take a risk on God. You've got his promises, and we don't know how long we have. I tell you what, I want to die with my boots on. I want to die busy doing what I'm supposed to be doing, not sitting back and playing crossword puzzles in a trailer in Florida somewhere. That's not for me.
Me neither. I can't imagine going out that way. I haven't lived life that way. I don't want to go out that way. But I love what you're doing. I think this is amazing. How often do you do it? How many times per year do you take these kids into the field like that?
Well, the field is actually a local airport. We would put together a program, as you asked before, are they pilots? No, they're coming and they're curious about this. And we give them hands-on, we give them stick time, but they're never the pilot in command. I am a certified flight instructor, but at the Brigade Air camps, we were never logging time towards a certificate or rating. They were just introductory and familiarization flights. whetting their appetite. It's kind of
You're
what
planting the seed. Yeah.
Yes, we are. It's kind of what the EAA Young Eagles program has been doing for 40 years now. First flight, but we're doing it several times during the week and giving them full exposure to straight and level and banks and landings and takeoffs and the whole thing. And then we do ground instruction time. So they're learning about aerodynamics, they're learning about physiology, they're learning about the air traffic control system. And then we've got a ream of video material, which comes right from the mission field, live stories. Some of them are mine. Most of them are from other mission groups that we work with, of how God has used and rescued live stories. And some of them happened. One of them is down in Colombia when rebels grabbed the pilot and plane at gunpoint and took him off to an encampment in the jungle. And they were there for months before he escaped in the middle of the night, crawling on his hands and knees through the jungle, found the airplane, uncovered it, and took off in the thick of night with no runway lights.
That's like out of a movie. That's like out of a
it's-
movie.
they actually-
And why
they
would they
actually-
keep him? Why would they hold him like that other than they were hoping to get a ransom paid?
That's it. Hostages. They wanted ransom, right? So, I mean, the mission made their own homespun movie, and that's one of the movies we use at our Brigade Air camp. So this is all real stuff, all right? And
How long does the camp last every time?
It's a week. It's been a week. So
This is like science camp, man. Next level science camp. I would be all over this if I was that age. Man,
Well,
that's life changing.
even though you're 31, you're still too old. So, you said you're
31.
You said you're past 30. So, yeah.
Right.
So, I am for the last 3 or 4 years now, because I'll be 67 this month. You pointed that out earlier. I'm not going to ask. The FAA starts to weigh in on guys with a pilot license once you're 65. If you're flying for the airlines, you can still pass a physical and keep doing it. I still have a flight instructor rating. I still have a commercial pilot license and a second class medical, but I'm not using it that much anymore because honestly, that kind of flying to the kids and going in circles and stuff, wow, it's tiring. And that's not the kind of flying I used to do when I was in Mexico, but what the Lord led me into. And so we've handed off the camps that are still going. They're in Maine and in California, and there's one down with one of our partners here in North Carolina near Charlotte. And so other people run them now. And my role is doing what I'm doing with you right now. And it's drawing attention and promoting, and wrote my a memoir. Biography would be terrible. And told my story to say, look, if God could use me where I started, he can use anybody, but it's got to be on his terms and in accordance with his word. We don't get to tell him how he's going to do that. Right. So it's remembering he's God, I'm not. And he's got plenty to say about that. And he's a good God and he loves us.
So you got several camps or schools throughout the U.S. Sounds like at least 3-4 different states.
If you go to our website, to our partners page, you'll see live links there on the partners page. And every summer that list changes. And you go directly to them now. We used to process all of the camper registrations on our site. Camps and campers. There you go. And that partners organizations, for instance, click on that first one there that says Baptist Park. That's up in Maine. That camp's been going for 16, 17 years now. I've lost track, but it'll go to their page, to their site. JARS has one. That's the one that's in North Carolina. And so I don't have to do the hands-on management and processing and buying the insurance and all the logistics. And so anyone
there's
interested,
things that come into play that you don't even you can't even consider. And look at this. I'm looking at the cost right now for an entire week, and that includes meals.
Soccer camp. That's because of the network of aircraft owners and volunteer pilots. Listen, that's the biggest expense for doing this, obviously, is the aviation expense. But we've got a network of partners out there who want to loan their plane and want to take a week off. Maybe a lot of them are airline pilots. We've got some great stories in there on the website too. And they put in for a week of vacation. and they come and fly for our camp. Other guys, there's a guy up there at that camp who's been working for FedEx for many years. And he schedules it every year now and takes that time off for a week or two, and he runs that aviation camp, and he's a FedEx pilot. So it's
That's a very reasonable price. That's basically $100 a day, and you're getting the lodging, you're getting all the meals for your kid, your grandkid, your nephew, your niece, your neighbor's kid, somebody that you want to share a blessing with.
You're on the West Coast, Charlie. Go back there if you don't mind. And if you click on the link for MAF, they're closer neighbor to you than the one you just saw. So the third one down there on the left.
MAF in Idaho?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, there it is. Aviation Adventure Camp.
That's it.
Oh, you got one coming up in July. In Cascade. Beautiful.
Yep. And it's at the Cascade, the old Cascade train depot. Oh, it's a beautiful spot because they do kayaking.
Cool.
The river's right there next to the airport. So
even that price is very reasonable, $975.
Yeah.
And this is life-changing stuff here. This is something that a kid who's like, yeah, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I don't know. Maybe
exactly
I'll be
what it's for.
Yeah.
It will light a fire. If they come, go one more on
it has to.
Look at the third one, if I can draw your attention there. Not the third one, but it just says JARS. They're another one of our partners where we ran and organized that camp for about 16 or 17 years for them. And yeah, go back to our website. There you go.
JARS, there it is.
Yep.
North Carolina.
There you go. And
where the mission takes flight. That's a great photo right there. Look at that.
And that 206, that's a Cessna turbocharged 206. They bought that airplane for just doing introductory flights for young people after we infected them with our method. And now they use this as their primary.
We infected them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they caught the bug, man. They saw it works because we've been doing this long enough. One of our campers in 2017, young lady came back. She had gone on from the camp she took when she was 17 years old. And then in 2017, she came back as a rated flight instructor. And she was one of our volunteer pilots now as a second generation flying more campers.
Wow. Bruce Wolff, I am so glad that I met you. I am just fascinated with all of this. And let me bring up your book once again, Finding Hope, Navigating an Obscure Path, Learning to Trust God When You Can Barely Understand Him.
Now you're on the Amazon. I can see you're either on Books A Million or Amazon or Barnes & Noble. That's fine. You can go there to get it. But you know what? I didn't mention this earlier, but Fidelis Publishing is the publisher of my book. And Fidelis was started by retired Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, which you probably have heard of. So Ollie North started Fidelis, and his longtime friend and the editor, Gary Terashita, has worked very closely with me, and what an incredible ministry he had to help me get this book off the ground. Well, for the 250th birthday of America, Fidelis is running a coupon with a 25% discount all of 2026.
Look at that.
So it's 250THBDAY, 250th birthday at faithfultext.com. And you get 25% off if you go to them. So
of your book or all their books?
All their books actually this year.
Okay, so we got to remember the title of yours then to be able to do that. But okay, so keep that up there. Anybody still trying to write that down? 250THBDAY. That's the promo code or coupon code. 25% off. Faithfultext.com. And look on there, because I'm not a big fan of Amazon. Look on there. I hate promoting them. I'm always asking people, can I get it through your website? I don't want to go to Amazon. I hate them.
Yeah.
I think they're wicked. Jeff Bezos. No, thank you. Anyway, it's called Finding Hope. Oh, there you go. Look at that. I can make it bigger. Finding Hope, Navigating an Obscure Path.
Here, Here, I got one right here too. Look at
There
it's
you
amazing.
go.
I have one right there. You go.
You have one. There you
You
go.
see my All right, man.
Dude,
Thank you so much, Charlie. It's been wonderful.
I fully agree. And if anyone was bored by all our aviation talk, then they just don't get it. They're still in the dark.
Okay, wait. Then here you go. So that's 250 Tango Hotel Bravo Delta Alpha Yankee.
Yeah.
If they were tired of the aviation talk, now it just got worse.
There you go.
There you go.
Very
All right.
good.
Now,
Bruce Wolff, and his website is BRIGADE air.org. Brigade, BRIGDADE. Brigade, no,
BRIGADE.
air,
AIR.
AIR.org.
You got it. You got
Good
it.
heavens. I'm lucky to be functioning. But I really, you're a blessing. You're a blessing, and count on me to
So are
help
you.
in the future. From this point forward, anything I can do to help you, count on it. Just reach out anytime.
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you.
Okay, buddy. Talk to you soon. That was awesome. See, I love that kind of stuff. That's life adventure that you'll never forget. And the retirement package is awesome. Well done, good and faithful servant. Retirement package is awesome. Go to my website. Hey, Bruce, you need one of these mugs on your desk or behind you there, or you can be drinking out of it during your other shows. Let's talk about politics and religion. You need one of those big old 15-ounce coffee mug. Of course, it's red, like the Republican that I am. I got hats, I got shirts, I got all kinds of stuff on my merch store at charliesimons.com. Oh, my little scroll thing is gone. Forgot I turned it off for Godcast. Anyway, charliesimons.com, CharlieSimons.com. May God bless you and keep you. May God bless America. But most importantly, America bless God